welcome to Hilltop Wealth Advisors Economic and Market Update for the second quarter of 2021. My name is Curtis Byrd, and with me today is Rusty Eriksen. Rusty, thanks so much for joining me.
It's great to be here. I'm glad we get a chance to catch up today.
Certainly. Well, Rusty, I don't know about you, but I feel like lately I've had to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. There's so many topics dominating headlines today, whether it's COVID and its variants, vaccine distribution, fiscal policy, unemployment, you name it. Hopefully today we can dive into some of these topics and hopefully get an idea of what's been going on. So without further ado, exactly that, what's happening? Where are we?
Boy, you're exactly right. There's a lot going on, and in the last year there's been so much that's happened, but I think the headline story has been and continues to be the coronavirus. And if we think back to a year ago, we were really in the worst of it from an economic perspective, right? So unemployment jumped to 14.8%, which is the highest we've seen since the end of World War II. For the second quarter of last year, GDP contracted by 31.4%, which was the highest ever within a quarter. So we were really grappling economically with this virus, not only from a healthcare perspective, but also what the impact is to individuals, to the labor force, to businesses. And thankfully, as swiftly as we saw some of these contractions, we were able to see some progress. And that took shape in many different ways. So the Federal Reserve stepping in, state and local government, the federal government as well with the CARES Act. We saw a lot of things that I think have helped us grow and get to a place where we are seeing more and more recovery, and hopefully that'll continue.
Right, certainly. I mean, we are in a hyper-accommodative environment. When you look at the Fed, I mean, currently there's a $120 billion per month bond buying program. Look at them keeping interest rates low, and consumers have been taking advantage of that. And the evidence of that has been spikes in new mortgage applications. And then across the aisle, we look at our government, record levels of fiscal spending. And while it's all been great, we've been needing it to really get out of the bottom. And it looks like that's really what's been happening. So that all sounds great. It sounds like we're in a sweet spot, or have been in a sweet spot. So I guess, could you help me with the Hilltop outlook? Where do you see things going?
Yeah, the Hilltop outlook, right, comes from our own research, also talking with economists and investment professionals. And, we are continuing to be optimistic about the trajectory of the U.S. and the global economy. Here in the U.S., when we look at things, we really feel like we're seeing a consumer-led recovery. If we look, for example, first quarter GDP coming in at 6.4%, I think is the indicator of that. We see a record amount of cash on the sidelines, and that's to be expected, and it comes from a variety of places. One is during a recession, you would expect people, to the extent that they can, to save more and build up that nest egg for the unknown, and that certainly has happened. But then also with the stimulus checks and the stabilization efforts that were put into place, individuals by and large have more cash these days. And so that record amount of cash is on the sidelines, it's beginning to be put to work, and we're hopeful that that continues to happen. Our expectation, based on our research and talking with others, like I said, is as we get to the end of the year, hopefully GDP is somewhere around 7% for the year, unemployment coming down somewhere around 5%, which means that we've added probably about 500,000 jobs every month from now until the end of the year to get there. So I think from a consumer side, things have gotten better, and we're really hopeful that they continue to get better, because we certainly are mindful that there are sectors of the economy, pockets of the labor force that continue to be very negatively impacted. And we're hopeful that we'll see this fuller recovery, more of a rising tide lifting all boats as we go through the end of this year, beginning of 2022.
Right, and that's such a great concept of the rising tide, because even if you look at the public side, corporations have been having strong earnings as of late, in particular your banks, right? But if you look at, the high valuations, look at the PE ratios, if earnings continue to rise, it's going to bring up that denominator. And so now the equities market is going to look a little bit more favorable. So definitely something optimistic to keep an eye on. But Rusty, you and I know we're fiduciaries, and so that comes with responsibilities, right? We have to tell the truth and the whole truth. Now, this video, it's been great, A lot of optimistic things, sunshine and rainbows. However, there have to be some risks. What do we need to keep our eyes on going forward?
I think those are wise words, Curtis. And while we are optimistic, we want to certainly be cognizant of the risks. And I think for us right now, the biggest risk that we see continues to be the coronavirus and how we move forward through the pandemic. I think we're seeing a lot of progress with vaccine distribution, progress towards herd immunity. Hopefully, we'll continue to see that, but we are looking at, what are the impacts of variants? What are the impacts potentially of groups of people who are reluctant to get vaccinated? Maybe that delays us getting to herd immunity. And then also, is there just going to be a reluctancy to kind of go back to life as normal, or what normal looks like going forward, right? Are people going to feel comfortable going into the office, going out to eat, going on vacation, doing the things that we normally do? And so I think those are the things that we're watching very closely from a healthcare perspective and from the coronavirus. But I think there's also some things to watch from a policy perspective as well.
Certainly. I mean, we're grateful for all the fiscal spending that's been taking place. However, that bill has to come due sooner or later. And so the question is how? Will it be in the form of inflation? Will it be in the form of spiking tax rates, right? On the personal side, that's never fun. But on the corporate side, companies' bottom lines are affected. Is that going to spill over into the equities markets? So definitely something to keep an eye on going forward. Now, Rusty, we covered a lot of ground today. So as far as just something to leave here with, I guess one thing would be sticking to your plan, stay in the course. For those clients and investors that stayed the course in 2020 and through 2021, they're still reaping the benefits of it. The markets have continued to run. Even though we expect volatility and for profits to continue to be taken, historically the markets have been resilient. And you look at a lot of the things we discussed today, it seems like there's evidence that markets will continue to be resilient. But what do you think? What do you think is a great thing to take away leaving today?
Yeah, I think that's a great takeaway. I think for me, my takeaway would be an encouragement for folks to think about the list of things that maybe they have outstanding to do, and look to cross one or two of those off this summer. So for example, at Hilltop, we're about to enter our mid-year review season where we think about and talk about estate planning, beneficiary arrangements, protection planning, so life insurance, for example. Some of those things maybe aren't very pleasant to think about. They're easy to procrastinate, but whether it's a written list or a mental list, I know we all have one, and we're never going to get everything crossed off the list, but I think we'd all feel good if we maybe crossed one or two things off that list, and that would be my recommendation.
I feel like my list, it only continues to grow. So great takeaway. Thank you for that. Now, Rusty, this was fun. Thank you for your time today. Thank you everyone for joining in on our discussion. Special thank you to all the essential workers out there that are essentially putting their lives on the line just to make sure our country continues to run. If you'd like to learn more about Hilltop, our perspectives, or just the Hilltop way, we'd love to hear from you. Give us a call. We have a brand new website, and on there we have a blog section that we update regularly. So feel free to keep an eye on that from time to time. Like I said, I had an absolute blast today. Hopefully you did too. I guess we'll just have to wait patiently until next time. But thank you so much, and I hope you all take care.
That's right. It's been great. Take care, everybody.